And welcome to AM Prime on WESN Content Capital. I'm Keaton Shaw. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. Glad to be here, of course, and a bit excited for the lineup that we have this morning. As you are aware, every Friday we usually tend to have a sort of a youth forum here on AM Prime. And today we are pleased to add one more personality to the program. He's very familiar to the WESN audience, and I'll start by introducing him. Camille Pascal joins us. Camille, good morning. It's good to see you.
Hi, Keaton. Good morning. Good morning to all of viewers and listeners on WSN. It is my pleasure to be here, and of course, it has been a while.
It has been a while indeed, but nevertheless, as I said, it's always good to see you here, and thank you very much for joining us. Looking forward to your contribution indeed. And joining us as well is a gentleman who has had his presence felt across DNT over the last weeks, especially with his contributions on the program. Chris Hussain. Chris, welcome back. It's good to see you again.
It's great to see you as well, Keaton. Good morning. A special good morning to everyone in studio. Of course, Kemuel and Trinidad and Tobago. I know it's very early to have some of these discussions, but nevertheless, we will press on as usual on our Fridays.
It's never too early and never too late to have these discussions. It's the waking up on that we're debating. But we would be joined by RJ Alain later on in the program. I think the time difference in Tobago makes it a bit different.
Oh, Lord.
Anyway, guys, thanks for joining us. Starting up the conversation, of course, with what it's going to be quite an intriguing day tomorrow with the UNC internal elections. Now, I personally find this is a topic that has become very exhausting to speak about. When I look at the contributions from both sides, it's a constant back and forth. That's my personal opinion. But that being said, it's still set to be quite an intriguing day in the sense not only for the future of the United National Congress, but also for the future of the TNT as a whole. And as one of our colleagues pointed out yesterday, it actually all what happens tomorrow will lead to what we see on a ballot paper in 2025. But I'm going to actually start the conversation this morning with Kemuel and asking Kemuel his thoughts and opinions on what is taking place internally within the United National Congress. An election is due tomorrow, of course, but you've got two slates. One slate, the United Patriots, is challenging the incumbent executive, but not challenging the political leader. Her post is not up for contention, of course. But even throughout the campaign, they said the issue is not necessarily Kamala Persad-Bissessar, but how the party is being run. At the same time, we have the STAR team, which is the incumbent executive of the United National Congress, who have labeled the Patriots as the sense of the party. So, Camille, your thoughts on all that you've seen thus far, all that has been said?
Well, it has been an interesting past couple of years with the UNC, but an even more interesting past couple of months within the UNC and everything that has happened by way of Mr. Parry coming out and speaking against the leader, quote unquote, but kind of shying away at some point until Mr. Rambly came out and spoke very publicly against the leader, not hiding at all, no undertones, everything was just there, out and open in the public, real and raw. And so I have been paying attention, looking at things, looking at the way in which things were dealt with very, very early on. I remember at one point messaging Chris to tell him about the way in which the leader responded when Mr. Ramley when Mr. Parry came out and then Mr. Ramley came out and spoke against her. And so it really has been unfortunate the way in which she has responded over the past couple of months, especially since the election is of the Natex and not necessarily for the leadership. And I honestly found that she should have not aligned herself with any particular slate, but seek to stay out of this election. But I've just been paying attention to all that has been happening and looking on and telling myself this can only not this isn't doing any good for the UNC. The UNC leader has been responding to the slate of the United Patriots, especially since there's an internal a national election, sorry, coming up next year.
Do you think that she should have responded at all? I mean, I know you said that she should not have actually aligned herself with any slate. Do you think she should have responded at all to any of the comments
Well, I
Maybe.
mean, everyone is free to defend and to clear their names if they think that they are being vilified in any particular way. So I do think that there's some level of response that was needed by her to clear her name, but the way in which she has been responding over the past couple of months to challenges, not even to her, but challenges to the NATEX, the team that supports her current national executive, is very, very telling of her nature and very telling of what we can see in the general elections next year, where choosing candidates going forward is concerned, especially with some of the things that she has stated.
Well, funny enough, as you said a couple months ago, you had messaged Chris to really have a conversation over what was happening internally and then being brought out externally, of course. And Chris and I have had a very brief conversations over the last couple of weeks, but there is something that he said yesterday. He says, yesterday we were speaking, and he says, what is happening tomorrow actually translates to a ballot in 2025. Chris, I mean, we know what we've seen over the last few elections, in fact, elections since 2015, how that really has unfolded. But 2025, right around the corner, of course, perhaps. I mean, they say it every single election, the most critical election, but 2025 is really, it's, I don't even know how to describe it. You can't say more critical than one. But Chris, just generally speaking, though, I mean, what we're going to see tomorrow will affect the ballot in 2025. But does it really, really matter? I mean, you are going to see UNC challenging the election anyway. Does it really, really matter what happens tomorrow?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, it matters what happens tomorrow, and I'll explain why. So in Trinidad and Tobago, we have two major political parties who are engaged in elections, be it general elections, be it local government elections. And so those two parties are the PNM and the UNC. And what happens at the primary level or the internal election level for both organizations impact what we get as our political product on general election day and what we see on the ballot, even the things that we hear in the political campaigns. And so internal elections of any political party is vital and very important for the organization to reflect on its track record, to go back to the drawing board if needed. And when we discuss the opposition party, that is the UNC, and the UNC has been in opposition for almost a decade. An internal election is a good thing. It's a great thing for the organization to hit reset and to say, let us reflect on our 10 years in opposition and how we can improve on that. And so what you had from both sides, you have the start team that is led by the political leader. Interestingly, she's not on the ballot. You know, whether the start team wins or not, she will still be the political leader. And then on the other side, you have the United Patriots. And the United Patriots is led by MP Parry. He's contesting the role of DPL, Deputy Political Leader. And so what I saw in this election, and it's sad that the United Patriots gave us a political offering. They said that this is what we intend to do to improve the organization. And on the other hand, you had the incumbents who would have been, in my view, instilling fear in the membership of the UNC, could not tell you anything why to vote them, but could tell you all the reasons why to not vote the other team. And so it was a very divisive campaign that would have, I believe, that the star team employed and the United Patriots, I think, tried to give us some sort of substance and hope in the campaign. But let us not forget that this election it was the public demand that caused this election. And so we can't forget that when we discuss this election that is today, well, in discussion today and the one to come tomorrow. So I
Chris,
want
let
to
me
agree
interject you there.
also.
Chris, sorry, let me interject you there. Why do you say it's the public demand? It seems to have been more so the demand of the United Patriots. Public commentary has been very limited to what you see on social media in respect to this election campaign.
Yeah. Well, MP Parry would have mounted a platform not by himself. If we recall, a few months ago when he mounted his platform, it would have been because of several UNC card-carrying members that would have spoken with him, right? And then he made a call. He stood alone. And then you had these other 4 MPs who joined the call. They answered the call. You had local government practitioners. You had constituency executive members within the organization responding to the call. So it had to be because of this big, I think, a nationwide call that he made. And what is interesting is that the other side or the star team that would have, in a way, been adversarial towards the election. We discussed, Keaton, when the call was made, the press releases that came as though elections were a bad thing, as though the organization is in government. And so the conversation about internal elections doesn't arise. And why is internal elections and the conversation so important, one may ask? Well, the reason is because the UNC has been incapable of defeating the PNM. And let me be a little more specific. The UNC, led by Mrs. Prasad Bisasa and its current star team, has been incapable of defeating the Rowley-led PNM. I have heard in the campaign, because I've been listening with intent, that they did it in 2010 and they can do it again. But that reference point of 2010 is with a Patrick Manning-led PNM. Your opponent is not a Patrick Manning-led PNM. Your opponent is a Keith Rowley PNM. So out of 2 times that you have faced a Keith Rowley PNM, you have not been successful. So I think the conversation about internal elections and UNC elections and hitting that reset button is a very relevant one. I think it's a productive one, very productive one. And when we look at all of the other third parties that are being formed, you saw PDP, TPP, you were discussing different parties like Hope, we're discussing different parties like NTA, we're discussing different parties like even the Patriotic Front. And why is it that these other parties that are opposed to the PNM, they don't find a place under the UNC, under the opposition party? And
Well,
so the
that's
conversation.
an excellent point that you raised there when it comes to coalitions or strategic alliances, as we've referred to it over the last year. It seems to be that the United National Congress is no longer a party that many of the smaller parties want to necessarily align themselves with.
If one would listen, just last week, the political leader in her campaign that she's not on a ballot for, you know, if you brought anyone from outside the country, they say, listen to this meeting, they would swear that, that Mrs. Prasad Bisasa is on the ballot, the way she's campaigning. But what is interesting is that she told Mr. Griffith to leave one of her sitting executive members alone. And interestingly is that you claim victory for the last local government election, which I disagree with. Keith, and we have discussed 1/7 is not greater than the other. And given the voter turnout in that local government election, nobody could really claim a victory, right? But so she went on to speak about Mr. Griffith and the NTA. But you told us that was your secret formula according to you, in how you won the local government election. And so if you are berating him on your political hustings publicly like that, then what is your formula going in? What's your plan? Your winning plan was with NT. So what's your winning plan for next year? What is your plan for next year?
Chris, I think you've raised some very valuable points. I mean, even in the interviews that I've had with sitting MPs and current opposition members, when I've had the opportunity, and I'm talking about those on the national executive, because I find within recent times it's even more difficult to get members of the national executive, the current national executive, on the program. I was very fortunate last week when I had Dave Tanku, but we're referencing, your manifesto from 2010.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, you ask them to elaborate a bit further on the manifesto and why is this relevant in 2024, 2025. And I can't get a direct answer, So the thing is, I also get every year in me a message from the United National Congress, and then media release celebrating this year is the 9th anniversary. I think this year was the 10th anniversary of Kamala becoming the political leader of the United National Congress. We're still celebrating that, and time has passed. Kevin, I'm shifting across to you now and asking you, the point that Chris has raised is very, very important in the context of the conversation. But we're speaking about the United National Congress needing a reset. It seems as though these smaller political parties do not want to align themselves with the UNC either. But why do you think that the opposition leader has to respond? To me, in my opinion, it seems as though it's been more of a campaign of defense more than anything else. I don't know if you gain that impression, but she's had to try to defend her position and the direction of the party. I mean, why do you suppose that this is happening in respect to reset? It seems as though the opposition leader is not fully cognizant or aware of the current situation.
I think it's because of the fact that she feels threatened by the possibility of someone coming and taking her spot, or a national executive being voted, a new national executive, I should say, being voted in, and now having the opportunity to assist in decision making going forward, especially when you look at general elections and the choosing of candidates for general elections from a UNC perspective come maybe by the end of this year, because by early next year you should be in gear for general elections. So I think she feels very threatened by the fact that there can be the possibility of a new executive. And to me, it has become one of, okay, I am the political leader, I am the opposition leader, I'm fine with security, I'm fine with whatever salary I get, and it has become that, like, I just want the position, I just want the spotlight. I don't necessarily want to work for that position. I don't no longer want to work for that spotlight. And the other MPs who support her, who are on the star team, or whatever they call themselves, it seems like they are comfortable being in opposition. They are comfortable saying, all right, I have a seat, I have a safe seat, I'm sure to win, and that's just what it is. And that's exactly what we're seeing. And so she has to come out. She feels the need to come out and do things in that way, because she understands that if she were to not do that, possibly there can be, and she understands that there's a change in, or turning of tides rather, against her and against her leadership, because of the fact that she has lost 2 general elections, and also, as Chris mentioned, no 7 is greater than the other 7. And so when you feel like essentially your back is against the wall, and you are seeing and you are staring defeat in right before you, you have no other choice but to come out and try to make things appear as they are not. And I think that's why she has come out in that particular way.
I think with the opposition leader as well, I, again, observing what we've seen over the last few years, expressing my opinion in this entire situation, I don't think she necessarily has the influence of a leader in the party currently. I don't even get the impression that she's the one running the party. It's really the current executive and those MPs that have surrounded themselves around her, of course, that are the ones that are really controlling things and running things. And she's just there because it's really, you know what, you stay there, we're going to run things however we like. You'll get your salary, you'll get the title, but you don't really have to do anything. And I think that to a certain extent has also led to the party to the position that it's in. So it's a threat, really. It's not a threat over power and influence. It's more so a threat over position. Because it's a threat over position, not necessarily power and influence.
But Keaton, here's the thing though, right? This election does not involve her. This election, and I want Trinidad and Tobago looking on, that they understand this, because there are many persons who are confused. They're saying UNC internal elections, they're trying to get rid of Kamla. No. This is a UNC national executive elections. It does not include the political leader post. Actually, according to the UNC's constitution, the political leader election is held every 3 years. So her election is actually next year. The national executive would include, I believe, 17 positions, from the 3 DPLs come all the way down to all the coordinators, chairman, vice chairman, etc. Those are the positions that are being contested tomorrow. So the conversation really shouldn't be, we shouldn't get too caught up with her, and I view it as a distraction, really. Because she's irrelevant, she's not on the ballot. So her say and no say is the same. She will vote in the election.
Chris, I'm sorry, we can't say that she's irrelevant. She's made herself very much relevant. Whether or
Correct.
not she's on the ballot paper, she has still made herself very much relevant in this entire conversation.
And but here's the thing though, as much as she has attempted to be topical in our discussion, which we're discussing her, on the ballot paper, she does not arise. So on the ballot paper, there's no position of political leader that you can vote for. So the questions that I think that were not answered by the star team, this had nothing to do with Mrs. Basar-Bissessar. This had nothing to do with her. This had to do with the position of chairman. There's an incumbent chairman. How have you served? What is your track record? You have served for a number of years. And what can you tell the UNC members in how you have improved the organization? And the same can be said about the deputy political leaders. How have you improved the organization? How many members have you made? If you hold the position of DPL for communication, why did certain PR issues fall through? What were some of the challenges that existed? There's a conversation that a plan that is being put forward by the United Patriots about building a home for the UNC, a headquarters. And so the star team responds. So on one end, you have United Patriots. They're saying they would like to erect a home for the UNC, whether big, whether small. A headquarters is important, owning your own headquarters, which makes sense. We understand in any political party why one makes
Which,
sense.
by the way, the PNM has also used to their advantage. Right? The PNM has said that they're the only political institution in TNT which has had an established headquarters.
Very, very, very true. And then on the other hand, you have the star team saying that the illustration is not their own building. And everybody know. Everybody went to primary school and they did a project before. And an illustration doesn't mean the actual thing. So I was shocked that that was the line and length of the argument that was being fed to us by the star team. What I was expecting from the star team was to hear at least a building plan, because you have been the UNC national executive for almost 10 years. So you must have something to tell us. You must be very excited. You must explain
Chris,
something.
I'm going to tell you a story. I mean, the current chairman of the United National Congress of Interest Tango, I did have him on the program last week. And speaking, the thing is, I just pushing this forward. The party is not necessarily in order. So to speak about them nationally and putting forward national solutions, I thought it was a brilliant opportunity when to have him on the program for him to speak about his suggestions and his solutions. When he said that $70 billion could easily fix all of TNT's problems. Brought him on the program, asked him straightforward questions, but he put forward suggestions, he put forward, as I said, snippets of the manifesto from years gone by. And I asked him, how are you going to implement this? What is this going to cost? What is the process? And I'm just paraphrasing, not saying that's the direct question. But one of the things that intrigued me was that he said, that is not my job. I'm in opposition. And that is not my job. Yeah, no, he said that. He said that in a He says, I'm in opposition. That is not my job. And I'm here like, but hold on. You're the one making these statements publicly. And this is very much your job. This is very much your responsibility. And if he is telling me this, then guess what? It already tells me there are no options for 2025. But Camille, I'm coming back to you because we're going to end this segment in a bit. And
Sure.
I know that I had, was saying that it seems to be more so a threat, not to power or influence, but more so to her position. There was a point that you had. I don't know if you'd like to speak about it now.
I kind of forgot, but I think this was really going to respond to what Chris had responded to just before you came back in. But as I was mentioning before, she feels threatened in that particular way, and she has to come out and essentially kind of grand charge and be like, I am the leader, but you are not on the ballot, as Chris has been mentioning over the period of time. You are not on the ballot. You are not up for election. Why are you positioning yourself as though you need to be there? You don't need to be there. This is not your place. your time will come next year, and that's the point that people should know. This election is not about Kamla Persad-Bissessar.
How does this, your final question, gentlemen, to both of you, how does this election actually affect Kamla Persad-Bissessar's campaign for opposition leader in 2025? I'm not even speaking about general elections now. How does this campaign that we've seen this time around for NATEX actually affect her campaign for that position of political leader in 2025?
Well, Mr. Parry and the United Patriots, because I've been listening with intent to both sides. He has been very clear that it is not about who you work with, it is about who you work for. And so he understands clearly that when they win, should the United Patriots win tomorrow, that they are willing to work with every single UNC member, including the political leader. There's no palace coup or anything like that. So he has stated clearly, frontally, and every member of his slate, they are interested in working for the membership of the UNC, interested in working for the membership of the UNC, and they're also interested in working with the political leader, Mrs. Persad-Bissessar. What we have on the other side is something very different. Is something very different. An interest in not knowing who you work for, which is the UNC members, and interest in who you're working with. That is your issue. And who you have worked with for the past 10 years have not resulted in electoral successes. And that's the purpose of a political party. It is to win elections.
Keith, I think you're mute.
Yeah, I was.
But in answering the question, I think if they were to decide, because I know the NATEX does have the power to say we don't wish to go forward with the elections next year, correct, Chris?
The national executive, I don't think they have that power. That is only through a national congress.
Right, through national
But I would
Congress.
hope that Mrs. Persad-Bissessar understand the same vote that she would have gotten as political leader from the UNC membership. Should the United Patriots get it, that's the same vote, that's the same legitimacy.
I asked that in the context of next year being a general election and them trying to get that out of the way as soon as possible. That's why I asked that. So I think it affects her in that way, and it affects their preparations for the general elections in that way. If it's possible that they should, once this election is over, they should try their best to get to the election of political leader and get themselves on election footing up until the general elections. Because I know for the PNM in the past, what they would have done is in the election year, they would have brought the election of political leader up to the year before so as to avoid having to go into a general election year with a party that's kind of broken up.
I'm just going to end by saying that the Prime Minister has actually given the opposition leader a thumbs up. And that's not necessarily a good thing, gentlemen, because I think that the current UNC has really benefited the PNM more than it has benefited a nation. And further to this, honestly, the best thing for the People's National Movement, if they wanted to win the next general election, if they were to call the election earlier than it is called for, while Kamla Persad-Bissessar is still political leader, it's all in their benefit. It's really there for them to take if that were the case. But gentlemen, let's pause there for now. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, hopefully we'll have our colleague Ajay with us to joining us for the conversation as we continue with all that is happening here in TNT. We'll be right back.
Imagine a world where arguments don't exist. CICR is a full-service conflict resolution company that offers mediation training and workshops for all. In 2024, our 40-hour workshops are back, giving you all the tools you need to become a certified mediator in Trinidad and Tobago. Want to know more? Call us at 768-6778 or visit our website. Let's work together to make the world a better place.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios. But they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokaram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN Content Capital.
Welcome back to AM Prime, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for staying with us this morning as we continue the conversation. And we paused on that conversation in respect to the UNC internal elections. But let me welcome to the program now our colleague across in Tobago, Ajay Alain. Ajay, good morning. How are you?
Hi, good morning, guys. Good morning. Good morning.
Well, thanks for joining us. I know that you have been busy over the last few weeks, and congratulations on all of the hard work and efforts that you put in. We'll get into that a bit later on. But Ajay, you have some thoughts you'd like to share with us this morning in respect to the conversation that we were having about the UNC internal elections and its reflection on a general election.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to remind the national population about what had happened with Tobago with the PNM internal elections in Tobago a couple of years ago. So I don't know if you remember what had happened between Mr. Kelvin Charles and we saw Dr. Angus, then at the time a member of the PNM, former Deputy Chief Secretary Joel Jack. And we saw where that same energy, unfortunately, flowed into the TJ elections, and we saw what the results were. Because it led to a 6 and it led to the PNM eventual 14-1. So I know it's probably a bit late to say this, but I think the UNC and the UNC members need to be very much mindful of that. And they also need to be reminded that sometimes these internal campaigns should not be as public in some of these instances as it has been so far.
Does that internal campaign that has become so external more than anything else, does it really matter to the incumbent? And the reason why I ask that question, Ajay, is because you get the impression, as we have concluded from this morning's conversation, that is not a matter of the next general election. This is more so rather the positions that the current incumbent have. They are satisfied and comfortable with where they are at.
Yeah, well, I think if we go back to that said same Tobago scenario with the PNM Tobago's council, we saw that same level of adversarial campaigning throughout the process. And unfortunately, a lot of the members became despondent and not pleased by the way the elected chief secretary then was hounded out of office. And it created a serious flow. So their internal members had challenges with it. They just stayed quiet and stayed home.
Mm-hmm. But actually, arguably, the difference between Trinidad and Tobago, as you said, is that Tobagonians don't forget.
No, but you see, we are seeing a change in generation, and let's hope and pray that the UNC supporters in Trinidad happen to have a short memory on this case, and it doesn't flow over into the upcoming general. Let's hope so.
What I would also say,
go ahead first.
I just want to quickly comment that also the difference here is that, and I have always used this as my intro when discussing political parties, that your main focus as a political organization is to get into government, is to win elections. And so when we discuss that similarity in terms of internal campaigning, PNM was in power in Tobago. The difference is that the United National Congress, under its current leadership, under its current NATEX and political leader, has been in opposition for the past 10 years, you know? And can the UNC survive or win the next election against the PNM led by Dr. Rowley? And so we know of two general elections defeats. Can they suffer a third one? And if they were to suffer a third one, I think that would have been the first time in about 40 years. The last person who would have been able to be prime minister for 3 terms would have been Dr. Williams. So
gentlemen, I can ask you all a question this morning. I'm shifting gears away from the United National Congress into the elections and focusing generally on what's happening nationally. Does the current external conflict, well, it's internal, it's become external conflict within the United National Congress, benefit smaller political parties, newer political parties and organizations, as well as the established People's National Movement? Is this something that is more beneficial to them than anything else? I don't know who wants to answer that question first, but the floor is yours, gentlemen.
I missed part of the question. Do you mind repeating it, please?
I'm speaking about the current internal conflict of the United National Congress. It's become so external. Does it have any benefit at all to smaller political organizations, many of whom have said they're not actually forming any sort of alliance with the UNC? But when you have other parties like the NTA, when you have HOPE, or when you have the IDA, and even Congress of the People, by the way, who's recently been speaking up a bit more, is it more beneficial to them as well as the current People's National Movement administration? What is we're seeing taking place with the United National Congress?
Sure. I'd say it's beneficial, yes, because they would learn what not to do, and they will learn how not to organize their internal elections, and how not to campaign in that sense, and how not to treat with persons who you deem as dissidents, and persons who you deem as challenging you, when they themselves are essentially trying to just offer something different than what is current and what is now. And so I think in that sense, political parties would know. And then, as you mentioned, if I am looking on from the outside and I'm another political party and I'm seeing all of this happening here, I would wonder if I were to approach you all to join or to be part of some form of a coalition. I would say I would look at and hearing all the things that has been happening within your party, I would probably not want to be a part of anything, any sort of coalition with you, because it seems that your party itself can't work out its internal wranglings, if I may put it like that, properly, and then you want to come now on the outside and work with another party when you have a lot of issues on the inside. No, I would simply not want to work with you. And so, of course, it would benefit, it is benefiting the PNM and the government, because if it's that it takes some form of a coalition or coming together of entities to defeat them, then essentially what you're going to have is them not being defeated since you're claiming that they are your greatest enemy and they have done so much wrong to the people of Trinidad and Tobago over the last 9 years or whatever is the case.
Basically, it does well for their imaging more than anything else. The imaging of these parties more than anything else. It reflects well upon them. Is that what you think, Emil?
Yes, yeah, essentially that's what I'm saying. It doesn't go well, and it doesn't paint them in a good light in the public image, because people are looking on and they are seeing and they are understanding new people who you could have possibly swayed to come and vote for the UNC when they hear things that Mr. Rambley goes onto the platform and said when he came out probably about 2 or 3 months ago, and he mentioned that many of the structures within the party that were meant to give not just elected members a voice, but also to give just the average citizen a voice, they simply are not there anymore. And so you're seeing a party that is kind of in disarray, that doesn't have an effective working democratic process. Yes, they may be having an election, but in terms of hearing the views of the people within the party to make decisions going forward, there's simply that isn't there.
I'll put it this way, at least the political leader of the UNC doesn't refer to themselves as the owner of the party. That is perhaps the only benefit that we're seeing in this. Anyway, all right, gentlemen, let's end.
Keaton, I just wanted to give a quick comment on that as well. I think when you look at, I think first of all we need to become a bit more mature when we digest internal campaigns. Anybody within any organization is allowed to run for any office that they wish to hold, be a political leader, deputy political leader, whatever. And within Trinidad and Tobago, they're also allowed to mount a campaign and to offer something to the country and to the party. And I think doing that in the public domain, the way that the UNC has done it, I think it's a good thing. It allows for accountability and transparency in your messaging, in your campaign, in just everything that you do. So I think it's a good thing. And we see it in the United States with their rigorous primary debates. Do I think it's a bad look for the party? I think it depends on what angle you look at. If you look at the star team, they are saying anyone who's opposed to them, they are PNM and dissidents and Nimakaram and ungrateful and all of these different fear-mongering things. And if you look at the campaign under the United Patriots, you're seeing it's a big tent party. We need to build members. We need to improve the organization. Come one, come all. And so if you're in a third party looking on, I think you might be hoping one of them over the next win, because there's one group that is trying to make the organization smaller, and there's one group that is trying to expand the organization. And then there's one political leader who gets up there and endorse the team that is saying people like Barry Padarat is a frontline member, Khadija Amin is a frontline member, Dave Tangu is a frontline member, and he's saying that these people are standing in the gap for the organization, and that Mrs. Anita Haynes and Dinesh Rambali and Rushdan Parry, they are not standing in the gap, and they don't debate, nobody knows them, and they're incompetent. And I mean, if you live in Trinidad, you know that to be the furthest thing from the truth. When you turn on the Parliament channel, or you turn on any morning show, you know that to be furthest from the truth.
Well, I don't think many members of the current United National Congress who are sitting opposition MPs, and by extension, I do not think many members of Parliament who are government MPs are actually capable of holding a debate. I do not. I think it's both sides, and I'm not impressed, by the way, with opposition MPs, and you've just called a few of them, and their contributions generally to national issues and conversations surrounding national issues. And I think that is what has allowed, to a great extent, the government to get away with a lot. You have not had a strong opposition, and I've referenced it previously, well, many a times on this platform and on another platform, that when you saw Dr. Keith Rowley as opposition leader between 2010 and 2015, it was impeccable. I'll give the man credit where credit is due. As an opposition leader, he was very, very good. It was excellent what you saw in 2010 to 2015. The unfortunate thing is that he has not received that same sort of constructive criticism or fierce rivalry from an opposition leader as his time as prime minister, and by extension, by an opposition as his time as prime minister. And so, to a great extent, I do not see any of them being able to hold a conversation or a debate if they were to meet each other on a platform, which, by the way, gentlemen, I think that we should say is necessary and mandatory when it comes to the general election. Whether it be the opposition leaders meet to have debates, or MPs or prospects, those who are actually going up in a campaign, should meet each other for an election. All right, gentlemen, here's what we're going to take a quick break here on the program. I'm going to pause here for now. When we return, I want to shift gears and focus a bit on Tobago. Ajay yesterday actually did reach out with a particular topic he has in mind, and we're going to discuss that when we return. So bear with us. We'll be right back after this.
Imagine a world where arguments don't exist. CICR is a full-service conflict resolution company that offers mediation training and workshops for all. In 2024, our 40-hour workshops are back, giving you all the tools you need to become a certified mediator in Trinidad and Tobago. Want to know more? Call us at 768-6778 or visit our website. Let's work together to make the world a better place.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Here is your WESN News on the Hour. I am Sira Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. All eyes will be on UNC patriotic slate MPs when controversial whistleblower bill returns to Parliament on Friday. National Security Minister confirms charges against persons featured in gangland videos. Canadian blogger who posted gang culture videos on social media distances himself from the arrest of gang members. Internationally, Hezbollah launches rockets and drones at northern Israel military sites. Now for the details. The controversial whistleblower bill will return for continuation of debate in Parliament on Friday. The bill, which requires 26 votes for passage, will require support from at least 4 opposition MPs. Should it be put to the vote, the government will be hoping it can solicit the votes of opposition MPs who are either contesting or supporting the United Patriots slates in the UNC internal elections set for Saturday. However, MPs Rushton Parry, Rodney Charles, and Rai Ragbear say they will be guided by their chief whip's instructions about voting. Debate on the legislation was adjourned in 2022 and the bill was carried over into the 2023 and 2024 sessions of Parliament. The bill, which aims to combat corruption and other wrongdoings by encouraging and facilitating disclosures of improper conduct in the public and private sectors, seeks to protect persons making those disclosures from detrimental action and regulate receiving, investigating, or otherwise dealing with disclosures of improper conduct. So far, 19 government and opposition MPs have contributed to the debate on the bill thus far. The opposition has pointed out that parts of the bill are inconsistent with sections 4 and 5 of the Constitution and require a 3/5 majority for passage. Minister of National Security Fitzgerald Hines has confirmed that several persons arrested over the past few days for various offences, including under the Anti-Gang Act, were held based on evidence garnered from videos recorded and posted on social media by a YouTuber. Mr. Hines said that the police are actively pursuing extraction of evidence from the videos. He said some persons are already charged and others are in the process of being charged. Canadian blogger Christopher Hughes, also known as Chris Must List, who recently posted several videos on YouTube featuring men with guns confessing to involvement in gang activities, says he did not play any role in anyone being arrested. In an interview, Hughes says if anyone featured in his videos is arrested, it is because of activities that they are involved in, and he can't be blamed for that. He says everyone knew as adults what they were getting involved in when they opted for a certain lifestyle. Hughes is on bail, having himself been charged with sedition after posting his videos featuring gang culture in Trinidad and Tobago on social media. In international news, Hezbollah says it launched a major drone and rocket attack targeting several Israeli military bases amid growing fears of an all-out war between Lebanese armed group and Israel. It is the largest attack by the Iran-aligned group since the outbreak of violence between the two sides on October 8th, a Hezbollah source told Al Jazeera Arabic on Thursday. The group says the attack in northern Israel was in retaliation for the assassination of senior commander Talib Abdullah, known as Abu Talib, in an Israeli air raid in the southern Lebanese village of Joel earlier this week. The Lebanese group used 150 rockets and 30 explosive drones to target 15 Israeli positions, including some in the occupied Golan Heights, the source said. Israeli media outlets are reporting that Hezbollah rockets wounded at least 2 people and started 15 fires. Well, that's it to news on the hour on WESN. I am Sira Ali. Thank you for watching.
Welcome back to AM Prime, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being with us. Kendall Pascal has a bid farewell for now, and we thank him very much for his contribution this morning. Always good seeing him on the program, and we look forward to his contributions to come again on a Friday. But gentlemen, thanks for staying with us, Ajay and Chris, as we move forward now with the program. And we're going to speak about Tobago this morning. Ashley, I'll let you introduce this topic. I think it's again grateful that you've actually pointed it out. So, the floor is yours, my friend.
Okay, so I had the opportunity to spend some time up at Assembly Legislature during the past couple of months, so about 3 months or so off and on a project, and I bounced up on a piece of paperwork down there at the library. So I don't know if the technical team would be able to bring it up. Sadly, it's Trinidad and Tobago. Can have a read of the document. The reference is also there and attached to the clipping. So we all know about Gillingham Street in Scarborough.
Yes, Ajay, go ahead.
Yeah, so we all know about Gillingham Street in Scarborough, and I don't think we have ever explored the option as to who is Mr. Gillingham, why is Gillingham Street named Gillingham Street. And you'd often hear a number of Trinities say you all are attached to Trinidad because you all had no value at the time and you weren't producing as a colony. And it always gives this impression that Tobagonians or Tobago were of less value at the point in time. Tobago should often respond by saying, well, you see, we didn't have a choice and we were just put with you guys and so on. But if you take a read of the document that I believe is on screen now, can you zoom out on the document a little bit? Yes. So if you take a read of the document here, you will see that the document reads, the Secretary of State dispatched the royal order in the Council of Constituting Tobago award of the colony of Trinidad. And this was read by Sir Hubert Jenningham. So this happened up at Jenningham Street, at the top of Jenningham Street in Scarborough. That's why Jenningham Street has that particular name. My question to Trinidad and Tobago this morning is just to do a little introspection. If this document was happened so many years ago, why are we, Trinidad and Tobago, still carrying some of these adversarial ideologies and pushing it? Why are we not coming to the state where we can say, okay, that was how much, 100 years ago? We love Trinidad and Tobago the way it is, and we believe Tobagonians should be given some more opportunity to make their own decisions. I mean, we see that happening now with the oil spill cleanup, where monies have been allocated to treat with the oil spill cleanup. It has to come through Trinidad and central government. No problem, fine. But when it has to get to the actual island where the situation occurs, we now see challenges in the distribution of funds. Is it because we are still considered a ward in the Constitution? Just asking.
Yeah, considering a ward within the Constitution, it does seem so. But in respect to, okay, so I hear what you've put forward on the table. But when we speak about the issues at hand, are you speaking more so in the sense of the need for greater autonomy or for a restructuring of the Tobago House of Assembly and how the Tobago House of Assembly is seen within the Constitution of TNT?
Yes, I'm firmly in support of this. I mean, I went to the consultation on the constitutional reform that they held in Tobago. And I remember making this point and receiving some serious cross-eye from some members of the committee. And I remember having a conversation with former House Speaker at the time. And he was saying he'd love to see young people make these contributions. However, this is where the conversation has to go. I am not saying Trinidad should just release Tobago and say do whatever I feel like. I mean, why can't we have conversations on some of these things going forward? And this is where I think we need to aim as a people. I know we were discussing the issue of debates before, but we need to move away from the adversarial politics and be able to sit down and have conversations. We need to go back to the Pan Manning type of scenario where we are political enemies or we disagree politically, but we can have constructive conversations. Because since the PM came to Tobago and they took charge of the oil spill cleanup, the Tobago House of Assembly would naturally take a back seat. And I think that is understandable based on the order of precedence and the way things go. But if we are still being treated like a ward, and then we have to beg for a natural disaster that the whole world saw what happened, and we now say we need money to assist us in the cleanup, and it's like we have to beg again to say, hey, we're feeling it, we still seeing the impacts on the beaches. We haven't tested even some of the fishes in the area. I mean, how are we to now go and not feel like a ward when something that the whole world knows happened? We're struggling to get some sort of leveling or some sort of balancing off in this process.
Chris, what are your thoughts and opinions? Do you think Tobago is treated as a ward of the state as a whole?
So when I hear criticisms leveled at Trinidad or central government from Tobago or from persons within the Tobago space, I always go back to the effectiveness of your member of parliament. The government of Trinidad and Tobago, this is their second term, consecutive term, the People's National Movement. And they, within their cabinet, they have 2 Tobago MPs for Tobago West, Tobago East, and they hold 2 extremely, I think, important ministries. And I think they're both very well capable of advocating and debating Tobago issues. And so when I hear these conversations come up, I always think of the effectiveness of the MPs, specifically the Tobago MPs at the cabinet level. It's no secret that the political party that is in government in Trinidad is not the same political party that is in government in the THA. And so I can understand when Aji make the point about you can be political opponents but be productive. And so I agree with him that we need to call out our MPs, our assemblymen, whoever represents us, that move past the adversarial politics. We want progressive politics. We want you to be able to reach across the aisle and treat with the real issues. I recalled listening to the Tobago bill a couple years ago. Ajay, you and I spoke about this, and the type of debate that we heard coming forward from both sides. And it was not in best representation of the people in Tobago, especially listening to the consultations that Mr. Augustine would have led through the Joint Select Committee. I believe there's a Joint Select Committee, if I'm not mistaken. So I think what Ajay is speaking about is nothing that must be dismissed. We must always want progressive, productive politics in this country. And I think Tobagonians have an interest. I'm looking on to see the level of debate and conversation come next general election, because they would have had PNM MPs for 2 terms, assemblymen from TPP, and so they have an idea as to the representation they may subscribe to. And I'm looking on keenly to see the campaign.
Ajay, let me put you in a position to try and answer this question for me. What has the current THA executive actually done in respect to the push for autonomy? It is what they campaigned on. It was their main campaign point. I remember when they entered into office, Watson Duke was actually put in a position where he was charged with that push for autonomy. That fell apart. We know the history behind that. But, since then, what has this current THA executive done in respect to pushing for autonomy for Tobagonians? One can make an argument that they failed in that sense.
You make me laugh, Keaton. Simply because there was a committee headed by the late, great Ochoy Charles that was examining these options and these movements. So I know the committee still exists. I know they have consultations and they are preparing a document. The problem I would always say with some of these things is to be able to get and to reach the people and to have people understand what's happening. Because mainstream media has a tendency to be biased towards the sitting government for whatever reason it may be, even though we saw a different perspective coming out of the parliament recently. So they have been making push towards it. I mean, there have been small programs where now it's not just at the level of the public or the adults or the voters, but we now try to break the information down so the secondary schoolers would understand. They will even have primary schoolers now beginning to get involved in the process and to begin to interact with the act. It may not be as technical as the adults, but we just want them to begin to realize that. What would happen if we never had the THA Act? Would we have secretaries? How would that operate? Would Tobago be in a worse state than before? So we now in the process of beginning to break down the information as well. Because if you leave it just at that adult level, the reality is it's going to become a political football as usual. So we now have to target the younger generation of Tobagonians and allow them to begin to understand what it means. Border protection, national security, food production. How are we going to be? I mean, the Prime Minister recently made a statement concerning farmers being ready for export for places like Sandals and the Marriott and so on. But on the ground in Tobago, we don't even have food security for ourselves. How can we supply Marriott and these companies when we can't even feed our own selves? And this is where we want persons to understand the small implications of autonomy and of constitutional reform.
Mm-hmm. But okay, could and I'm sticking with that conversation, by the way, of autonomy. Do you think that the TPP, the current executive of the THA, can campaign on autonomy in a THA election, which I believe is due called for next year as well? Do you believe that they can actually campaign on that?
No, simply because they can't give it to us. I mean, they could reach Peter, Paul, Saul, and all, and the decision rests with members of parliament. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that Tobagonians doesn't seem to understand. A Tobago House of Assembly cannot give Tobago any more autonomy. Whether we like it, we jump, we drink Paco water, we boil sea moss, it would not change anything. This is a decision simply for parliamentarians to make. And the only way it can happen is we as Tobagonians have to apply sufficient pressure on parliamentarians, not just Tobago East and Tobago West, but parliamentarians across the board, government and opposition.
But then what you're telling me, Ajay, is that if that be the case, then the election campaign that was utilized in 2021 was null and void.
Yeah, because you see, there's a difference with being in governance and being on the outside looking in. Because we can campaign and say, oh, all the nice fancy things. And when you get into office, then you would see where your restrictions are. You would say, okay, yes, I'm cash strapped. Okay, we still have to go through this procedure, how the public service operates. So it's completely different. And I think the PNM was alluding to this in their campaign as well. Meaning it's completely different to be in governance than to be a completely newcomer going into the governance space. And even for new political entities in Trinidad and Tobago, this is also where part of the problem lies. Because the two established parties knew how the system works. And they have figured out ways to make the system work for them, or in some cases against them. So we now want to find ways of educating the population, and in this case, Tobagonians to understand. Tobago East and West cannot make any major change whether we like it or not. Because it's 39-2 and we're naturally outnumbered. If 10-1 is murder, what is going to be, what, 25-1?
All right, gentlemen, shifting gears, focusing on Tobago again. We've got about 10 minutes left for this edition of the program. And Ajay has raised some very valuable points, but there's something that that just hit me when I mentioned the TPP. We spoke about the UNC internal elections quite a lot on this program. We haven't spoken about the TPP internal elections, which I think initially were called for June 4th and then are now to be held on June 30th. So TPP internal elections are to be held on June 30th. Still awaiting a list of candidates. But again, gentlemen, the TPP, the PDP, you know, Tobago, that was a split, that was a breakaway. But I'm asking the question this morning, what is the difference between the TPP and the PDP, especially when it comes to ideology? Chris, I'm going to start with you.
Well, I think what I have, I'm an onlooker, right? I don't have the privilege like...
We all are. We all
yeah,
are.
I don't have the privilege like Ajay to live in that paradise of Tobago. But, I mean, what I can say is the PDP campaigned on a number of things. And I know you touched on autonomy. Now, I knew that they could not accomplish this in THE. But I understood that this was a movement that was being built. And so that conversation would eventually get to Parliament. So I assumed that, I thought that was the long-term goal. But seeing what have happened with the PDP and now the formation of TPP, I think the difference is one political organization seems to be centered around one person. Whereas the TPP is, I think, a bit more Tobago-centric, and they have shown from, you know, the way that the party was introduced. It came from the people, organized by the people in Tobago. They picked the color, they picked the name. Farley said he was the interim political leader until the internal election, and I think they have been very people-oriented, Tobago-oriented, and they have not lost that brand of who they work for. I think Mr. Duke, you know, is interesting, you know, Keaton, because I was on the same program with Mr. Duke at time. And I asked him about his constitution and didn't really get any kind of answer. He said Watson Duke is the PDP, PDP is the Watson Duke. And so that's the difference. You have a party that is centered around one individual and only one individual. You can't get much accountability as to, you know, the organs of the organization. It sounds like it's a one-man, one-party. And then on the other side, I think I see a serious political organization.
Very interesting. Ajay, I don't know if you have any thoughts and opinions in respect to that. I'm figuring out now the ideology of the TPP as compared to the, you know, under the previous umbrella of the PDP.
Okay, no. Let's go back a bit, right? And let's track PDP's process to office. We saw Mr. Duke starting on his own. We saw the results of that. We saw what happens when Dr. Faith got involved. We saw what happened when Mr. Augustine got involved. So much so that Mr. Duke took a back seat because, in my humble opinion, he saw the impact Mr. Augustine would have. I mean, Mr. Augustine is a lot more favorable, a lot more loved by the people, a little more measured, a little more controlled. And then he made the decision to step back and allow Mr. Augustine to take the lead. And it was a good political strategy. Let's be real. We know Mr. Duke by himself, this self-aggrandizement and what's in Duke is everything ideology would not have caused a switch at the polls. So now that he realized he lose that level of influence and he don't have that level of control and he can't dictate the pace of the chief, and the little boy turn a man and the man would stand up and say X is Y. That is what created the split. And I think to be honest, admire Mr. Augustine for that and for being able to say, here we're going on. This is how we're doing things and we have to do it properly. So I think leadership is the key. I am highly suspicious that Mr. Augustine is going to remain as political leader. I think we're going to see some younger faces coming to the fore. I mean, I am looking forward to see the outcome of this election result. It's internal. I think Trinidad and Tobago need to pay keen attention to it. A wind of change is currently blowing, and it's nice and calm and a nice sky blue. So let's look forward to all the best going forward from the Tobago People's Party.
To put it, Ajay, thanks very much for putting in your 2 cents there. There is a lot happening in Tobago, of course, with the Rocky Point Hotel. The Prime Minister yesterday actually indicated that he's going to ensure that a hotel is built at Rocky Point in Tobago. There are some question marks surrounding that. So again, shifting topic, but focusing on Tobago. My final question to you gentlemen this morning focuses on that. Yes, we can speak about EMA regulations. Yes, we can speak about concerns to the environment and the ecology. I understand all of that. My question is Tobago ready for a 5-star hotel? And the capacity that a 5-star hotel will bring to Tobago, what such would require, is Tobago ready for that? Ajay, I mean, you just said that Tobagoans don't even have food security currently for themselves. Do you think that Tobago can actually supply a 5-star hotel with all that is necessary, whether it be the labor, the food supply, etc.?
No, the answer is simply no. And to be honest with you, I am one of the residents that have been relocated as it pertains to the airport process. This is about 3 or 4 years now, and majority of us have not recovered. Majority of us are seeking government assistance from all different angles to help reconstruct. We can't do it. As far as I was made to understand, it is alleged the contract for to prepare the lands for relocated residents cannot be located anywhere in Tobago. That they can't find the contract. And we're going to fight up with Sandals and with Margaret. I mean, I read the Sandals MOU, and I could have told you that we were heading for problems. We don't have an issue with these types of institutions. But if you want us to do it, allow us to build out systems so we could get ourselves to that point. Mm-hmm. We have the Youth in Agricultural Program. What element of that program is being done in Tobago? Is it that we teach the youth in Tobago how to upscale, how to do farm management? And then you're going to come and say, that is the responsibility of the THA and is the THA to this, but you're underfunding them. How could we say something like this? Yeah, his jobs are available, but do we have the personnel trained to do these jobs? I mean, I know about 4 Tobagoans who have been trained by Sandals of the islands, and majority of them is either they're unemployed or they're working on a cruise ship somewhere on the outside. Are you going to bring them back to work here? I mean, I have close friends who work with Sandals across the region, and they would tell you quite frankly they don't have time for the family. Is that what we tell Tobagoans to do? We really have to sit down and think about some of these initiatives and read through some of these documents. The Prime Minister, in my view, sounds like somebody who's speaking from one Woodbrook Place or Westwood Park or one of these areas that are out and are disconnected, and probably because there are some sheeps or some sheepses in air condition up at Alma Road that are ready to be sold and goat and are ready to supply these people. But what happened to the other average Tobagoan? What happened to the farmers up in Glamorgan that complaining about having water issues and was taking the pumps out of the river? I mean, we have one of the harshest dry seasons here. What happened to these people? So it's a lot. And then to hear the level of arrogance at this point in time, I mean, it's distasteful, it's disrespectful, it's disingenuous, it's egregious. I can't even find words to describe what he said. Even if you're doing it, there seems to be no form of sympathy. He seems to be bullying his way through Tobago. And I mean, Tobagonians, as I've said before, we listen, we might be quiet, but you see when it comes to using that finger on election day, he needs to be very, very careful.
Chris, your thoughts on the Rocky Point Hotel? The Prime Minister says, listen, I'm going to make sure that this happens. RJ has given his 2 cents, his thoughts. He seems to be very frustrated because the impression that he is given is that Tobago is being left out of a process that is for Tobago. But Chris, your thoughts?
So you said, and RJ brought this up about food security in Tobago. Food security is an issue in Trinidad as well. So I think this is because when we look at the food import bill, clearly we have an issue with food security in this country, and that needs to be addressed in Trinidad and in Tobago. I'm always for improving brand Tobago, and because I really do believe that the more investment we make in Tobago is better for the tourism industry. So I'm always for that. Is sandals the answer? And if you have Tobagonians who live in Tobago, right? They work in Tobago and they're saying no, then I think you know, we need to take that into consideration. I know RJ is very colorful in his language this morning, but I do think that the voices of Tobago matter in this conversation, and I'm however very much interested in a Tobago branded hotel, which I heard on the campaign platform of PDP, well now TPP. I think that is something I'm more interested in, that sort of local branding of a Tobago hotel. Sandals seems to be a bit much for now, especially from what we have heard from Tobagonians.
Let me jump in here very, very, very quickly. There is a model that has been growing and been working called the Castara model in Tobago, where the persons would come, they would go straight to Castara. When they leave Castara, it's back to the airport out, because of the model of tourism that Castara offers. So it's a very people-centric, home-centric. You're renting out downstairs by you, but upstairs would still bring down breakfast for you. So it's more local, more integrated, and it has been growing. Why can't we not use that similar model and build similar systems to it? Because I live in the Canaan Bonaccord Crown Point area, and we have seen where this increase in nightlife and excessive culture has affected the locals, some positive and some negative, because it's like Bonaccord does not sleep anymore. Is it that the brand of tourism that we want to push, or is it that we want to push ecotourism? Is that we want to have out the bamboo lodges? We want to use solar energy, wind energy. So we could create a brand in the region that works. Barbados is now pushing it. So we need to take us time and examine the product, and we don't want to be don't like to be treated like a ward, as we are seeing in the same Marriott matter. Allow us to have some level of involvement.
Gentlemen, that's where we're going to end it. I'm actually going to, say a couple positive things. You mentioned Castara. Absolutely beautiful. I mean, we know about English Ones Bay, but Palatuve and Castara Waterfall, my goodness. And listen, you cannot beat Tobago's hospitality. I'm just going to end it there and say that. Tobago's hospitality is, I mean, Tobago is beautiful, but the people, the warmth that you feel from them, it's the best. And finally, RJ, Breb's Bakery in Tobago, boy, the hole in the wall bakery. I'm pretty sure you know about Breb's Bakery, my friend.
Who doesn't? And allow me to state quite clearly, Breb's Bakery is managed by the Deputy Chief Secretary's family. And I mean, they have been going for years. If you come to go country, I never pass by Breb's, I don't know where you're going. But
I think that is a tourist spot right there. I know it's managed because she did mention it to me at one point. That's her family, but it is that spot right there, my friend. It's a tourist destination in itself when you go to the island. So. Anyway, gentlemen, that is it. I've said it before, it's the best current roll I've ever had. I've had current roll everywhere, but Beb's Breaky, boy, oh my goodness, it is Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, before I get too carried away, thank you very much for joining us on the program this morning. Thank you very much to Chris, Ajay, and Camille for joining me. And ladies and gentlemen, to you, thank you very much for your time. We hope that we've really stimulated your minds this morning, whether it be through education or creating an opinion of your own. But definitely, we hope that you enjoy the program. Chris, thank you very much once more for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Keaton. Thank you again to Kemuel and also Ajay and the everyone in studio and Trinidad and Tobago. This was a very enlightening conversation, I must say, and I enjoyed the panel as well, the interactions on the panel. Thank you for having me.
Certainly indeed. Ajay, thank you very much once more for your time.
No problem. Thank you, and I look forward to being here again.
Certainly indeed. And if I be hopping across the TNT, bring some currents roll for Chris and I, please. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Wishing you a great day ahead, a great weekend ahead. May it be a safe one indeed. And to my dream team in studio, Mr. Ryan Gomez-Burke and Mr. Milewood, thank you very much indeed for all your continued hard work and efforts. I'm Keaton Shaw. Today is a good day to have a good day, and we'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Folks, we're back and better than ever.
Your show have always appeared to be a show that is focused on going to the cause or looking to the cause.
We hardly ever talk about the white-collar crime, though. We always talk about the ones that involve more as physical violence against individuals.
The citizens will only measure transmission when water starts to flow through their taps.
The Constitution doesn't talk about local election.
Contract mafia that's responsible for looting the country and they own and operate these politicians.
If you are running a country and you can't say nothing as a prime minister, please take up your bag and go.
It is not comparative to the murder figures, but it is in fact very high.
I believe he's protecting certain individuals.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God. So we kind of at a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's been the victim,
right,
or the man has been the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI. Worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokaram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the game.
not no.
Let's go to the last part.
This is 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploiting the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
First or second in the majority of constituencies. So at this point, of course, things can evolve, but at this point, we can expect that the majority of second runs will be between far right and the left-wing coalitions, and maybe in some constituencies the Macronists will try to be in the second run, but it's going to be more difficult for them this time.
So did Macron misplay his hand here?
Well, Emmanuel Macron clearly hopes to provoke a rally around the flag effect and to take his opponents by surprise, but probably he did not expect the left to achieve a new alliance like that. So yes, it is clear that the president has taken a very hazardous risk.
All right. Damien, thank you very much for your time. Damien Lecomte from Sorbonne University. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, right-wing groups are mired in infighting. France's establishment Conservative Party Les Républicains ditched its leader, Eric Ciotti, after he called for a political alliance with the far-right National Rally. That decision, a challenge in France's courts. We're awaiting a decision from the tribunal this Friday evening. Liza Kamenoff has more.
In this video posted on social media, Republican Party's Eric Ciotti is cracking on with work at his office at the National Assembly. This follows a unanimous party decision to exclude him, a decision which was validated Friday by a new political bureau. The day before, Ciotti was determined to show that he was still party president.
I am the president of the party. Takeover is those who do not respect the rules.
The expulsion comes after his call to ally with Marine Le Pen's National Rally, which infuriated the Republicans. Ciotti then added more fuel to the fire by having lunch with Jordan Bardella. The Republicans decided to replace the disputed president with the party's Secretary General Annie Genevard and MEP François-Xavier Bellamy. As they remain divided on an alliance with the far right, just days before the deadline for completing their list of 577 candidates needed for the legislative elections.
Well, the G7 being held in Bari, Italy this year. On day one, the war in Ukraine dominated talks. On day two, it's China. A draft communique said the group of leaders will pledge to take action against Chinese financial institutions that help Russia obtain weaponry for its war against Ukraine. Leaders also vowing to take action against what they call unfair business practices in China. Our foreign editor, Philip Turrell, has been covering the summit for us. He had this update.
I think there's a general feeling here, William, that China is not playing by the rules, and that has irritated the members of the G7. That's the first point. The second point is that they really want to put a united face on this and say, look, this isn't just China having it out with the United States or one or two European countries. This is China having it out with all members of the G7, and that's why we are together in all of this in trying to fight against Chinese what they basically say are Chinese irregular business practices, and they want a level playing field. That said, there are statements here which say that there is actually no contentious issue with China as a country. This is just on the way they are trying to use their business practices. Basically, it boils down to the fact that China subsidizes its own businesses, particularly green energy businesses like the manufacture of green vehicles, of solar panels, and then they are sold off to European countries and to the United States for much cheaper rates than the domestically built equivalents, which means that companies in Europe and the United States can't compete with Chinese imports. So what they want to do is to increase tariffs on those imports coming in from China, the 100% on electric cars, for example, in the United States, up to 38% for electric cars coming into Europe, just to say to China, okay, we will take those in, but they're going to cost a lot of money, and therefore we're going to put the preference on buying from our own domestic markets first. So that is basically what the bone of contention is between China and the West. But there's also another issue, and that is the war in Ukraine. There's a lot of suspicion about exactly what game China is playing in all of this, whether it really wants to supply weapons to Russia. It has economic deals with the Russians. It's also been known to still be exporting spare parts to Russia, which can be used in the construction of missiles and drones. And last night, Volodymyr Zelensky, in a press conference with the American President Joe Biden, was asked about whether he believed the Chinese were going to sell weapons to Russia. He said that he'd been on the phone to the Chinese President Xi Jinping, who had assured him, given him his word, that no weapons were going to be sold to the Russians by China. But Volodymyr Zelensky, a little bit unsure about whether Xi Jinping was telling the truth, saying, well, we'll just have to see what he decides to do in the long run.
And amid these rising global tensions, the Pentagon said a U.S. nuclear-powered submarine has arrived in Cuba. This a day after a Russian nuclear sub docked in Havana, less than 150 kilometers off the coast of Florida. Cuba's foreign ministry insisted that the Russian vessel is not carrying nuclear weapons. The unusual Russian deployment harking back to the Cold War, when the Soviet Union deployed nuclear missile sites on the island, triggering the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. Ed Augustin reports.
A Russian naval deployment docked in Havana on Wednesday for the first time since the start of the war in Ukraine. Analysts say it's a signal, coming 2 weeks after Washington gave the Ukrainian army the green light to hit targets within Russia with US weapons. The Russian Defense Ministry released a video of the flotilla carrying out drills while approaching Cuba, and the Biden administration dispatched 3 destroyers to track the flotilla. Cubans watching said the arrival was good news.
We need each other. Cuba has a geographically strategic position in the middle of the Americas, and Cuba needs Russian economic help and technology.
This Russian tourist, enjoying Havana's sights with his wife, agreed.
I hope that the relationship between Russia and Cuba gets stronger. We have lots to offer each other.
Russian tourism to Cuba has so far doubled this year. As trade has increased, Cuba's position on the war in Ukraine has become more pro-Russian, with Havana now supporting the invasion.
Both nations, both Russia and Cuba, are subjected to unfair, arbitrary sanctions that originate from the same enemy, the Yankee Empire.
Though Russia and Cuba are moving closer together politically and economically, they're still not military allies. Nonetheless, analysts say that symbols like this will make any future rapprochement with the United States a lot harder. Sanctions placed on Russia since the war in Ukraine and extra sanctions placed on Cuba ever since the Trump administration are binding the erstwhile allies together.
South Africa's parliament has been meeting for the first time since the May 29th general election. Talks going on behind closed doors. The African National Congress and the Democratic Alliance, the 2 biggest parties in the newly elected parliament, have signed a deal to form a unity government. New MPs are being sworn in this Friday, the Speaker and Deputy Speaker also being elected. And finally, lawmakers choosing the president, widely expected to be Cyril Ramaphosa once again. Well, the International Monetary Fund voted to approve a payout of almost $800 million for Argentina. This as the country continues its drastic austerity measures under President Javier Milei. The country has seen its currency devalued since January, and inflation is soaring to almost 300%. Liza Kamenoff reports.
After months of crippling inflation and eye-watering prices, Argentina's monthly inflation rate dropped to 4.2% for the first time in 2.5 years. Though still incredibly high, residents in Buenos Aires hope this is a sign that their economy is being put back on track.
There's inflation. Before, I paid in electricity bills $55. Now I pay $277. But at least if you work, you can pay it. Of course, you can't make enough money to be a millionaire, but you can survive.
Clearly, the prices impact us, and in recent months, we have been suffering a strong price increase. But the figure of 4.2% is very encouraging, especially for what lies ahead.
But the country's annual inflation rate remains firmly over 275%, prompting the IMF board to disburse $800 million for Argentina's economic recovery, a payout which is part of an existing $44 billion economic aid program. Good news for far-right President Javier Milei, who since his arrival in January vowed to stop Argentina's economic decline. The country's Senate just passed his drastic reform bill, which will see budget cuts, privatization of state-owned firms, and the weakening of labor protections. But the economic reform package is highly contested, sparking protests in the capital earlier this week.
Unfortunately, the president is doing things wrong. So I want everyone, including the youth, to realize that things are going badly. That law must not pass.
Though inflation may be stabilizing, poverty in the South American country is on the rise. 27 million people are living in poverty. That is over half of the population and 10% more than in 2023, before Milei stepped into office.
Israeli helicopters attacked drones and warplanes, carried out strikes on Rafah in southern Gaza. On-the-ground Palestinian fighters engaging Israeli troops in running street battles. Israeli forces have operated in Rafah since early May, despite widespread alarm over the fate of Palestinian civilians there. Western areas of the city came under heavy fire on Thursday.
We have children. Eid is coming and we do not have balloons or toys. We don't even have hair ties for the girls. They cost 50 shekels. None of the children are wearing shoes and we do not have anything to prepare for Eid. And we cannot get a goat to sacrifice.
Unfortunately, there is no Eid spirit. There are no preparations because we don't have any means, as you can see. In normal times, our house would be decorated, the streets are decorated, and there are lights on the doors. But unfortunately, today we don't even have a house anymore and there is nothing to decorate. There's no Eid spirit.
Well, against the grim backdrop of the war in Gaza, more than 1 million Muslim pilgrims were in Mecca this Friday for the start of a Hajj pilgrimage. Most of the rituals held outdoors with little, if any, shade. The kingdom's health ministry has cautioned that temperatures in the holy sites could reach 48 degrees Celsius. Many pilgrims carrying umbrellas against the burning sun. Well, the European Football Championships kick off later this Friday in Germany. The host nation takes on Scotland. For organizers, safety and security of the fans is the priority. Germany's Interior Ministry welcomed around 350 international police officers. An additional 230 are working for a force set up for this tournament specifically. Euro 2024 taking place at a time of increased tension around the world with the war in Ukraine and the one in Gaza. Caitlin Kelly takes a look at the football, though. She tells us who the favorites are in the tournament.
Although they've never won the tournament, England are the bookies' favourite for the Euros 2024. With a stellar lineup including Kane, Billingham, Foden and Saka, the three Lions have never looked so good on paper.
Some unbelievable players. Whoever's on the pitch, I'm sure they'll step up and perform and help the team get the result that we want.
Despite reaching the World Cup final just 18 months ago, many have downplayed France's chances, but they do remain one of the favourites. Although there are concerns for the health of superstar striker Kylian Mbappe, the team are determined to put their best foot forward.
We're in a group that's confident, calm and laugh a lot. There's a great atmosphere every day and we're really ready to fight for each other.
For the Germans, home advantage may be on their side. It is veteran midfielder Toni Kroos's last competition and he is determined to go out on top.
I'm still hungry because I want to succeed. I want to win this tournament. If I didn't dream this was possible, I wouldn't be here.
The tournament starts on Friday night as hosts Germany take on Scotland. And bets are on as to whether England can finally bring it home.
And just a reminder of our headlines here on Paris Direct. Political upheaval in France continues. Left-wing parties binding together in an alliance ahead of snap legislative elections later this month. Earlier, they unveiled their manifesto, although